Okay, so what I'd like to do in this YouTube video is just take you through a couple of self-training exercises that you can use in conjunction with a wooden dummy before you actually start training with a partner. Now, in our organization, as you may be aware, we have 10 different ways that we can do Lap Sau. It's one of the most frequently used techniques, and there's 10 or 12 different ways that we use it depending on where your arm is in relation to your opponents. Your right arm could be facing underneath on top of their left arm, or your right arm could be across facing their right arm in a crossed hands position. Wherever the hand is, you need to be able to lap either the front or the rear hand. And there's several ways, well, there's lots of different ways that you can do that. It generally comes from a guard as a basic introductory way of training, but obviously when you get more experience, you don't really want to put your hand forward against someone that's good, because you're probably going to give them your guard. That's not what we want to do. We actually want to learn how to take control of the front of the rear hand, which is why I've incorporated so many different Lap Saus into the training program. So when it comes to a Sifu John student, a beginner that generally has very limited knowledge of Wing Chun Kung Fu, I teach the 10 ways through Lap Sau, or whilst I'm teaching Lap Sau. I also teach one technique and I do 10 different counters against that technique. And I'm utilizing the straight punch or the turning punch of the front and the rear hand. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of training exercises that's going to support your training, so that when you go live with a partner, you're not really remembering or thinking, you're just responding, which is what we want when it comes to your training. You don't really want to be thinking, you just want to be doing, you want to be alive and in the moment. So the first self-training exercise, you're going to stand square on the dummy and you're just going to place your hand forward like so. Then you're just going to lap, you're going to give a shallow turn. You can turn if you want to, or you can stay straight. It's entirely up to you, it doesn't really matter. So you're here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we change it on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's a base way that you can start educating and training the muscles that you're going to use for Lap Sau. The second variation is you're going to be standing in Buma, which is a leg forward, a forward thrusting stance. And you're going to have your leg pressing into the dummy. And then you're going to just raise your guard, and then you're going to lap. So you're going to bridge up and lap, bridge up and lap, bridge up and lap. One more. Here. Now this bridging is from the opening of the wooden dummy form. You just come up, you raise the guard up and you protect that gate. Obviously you are kind of protecting your body as well, with the elbow which is covering the rib cage. So that's your first way. We're learning to attack with one idea of Lap Sau. The other interpretation you can do with this drill, you can step forward and you can accompany a park sau, so you can slip the hand and then do the lap. So instead of getting the bridge with your mun sau, somebody punches and you cover, and the hand comes up like so. So you're parking and then you're lapping. And what you want to do, obviously I'm being lazy because I'm teaching, you want to sink down onto the dummy arm, a little jut of energy down so that you keep your forearm parallel to the floor. So from here, you just sink a little, and you obviously, when the leg's forward, I'm generally turning, making sure that the rear hip, the rear knee, and the shoulder is obviously turning into the punch, because I want to get as much as my body weight behind the movement. That's the first way that you can attack with this technique. Now let's talk about defense. Obviously, when it comes to Lap Sau, you want to learn how to use the rear guard. You really don't want to teach a beginner, when their arm's being grabbed, to punch with this hand, because they're not going to be able to do such a high level skill. So what I do for my beginners, I generally, when their arm's being pulled, I teach them to relax and raise the rear Wu Sau, which is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to cover and protect the head and the throat. Asking a beginner to relax their hand and punch someone, well, that's a high level skill. I personally don't believe a beginner has that capability in their nervous system to do such a high level counter. And the interesting thing about when somebody grabs your arm and you raise your Wu Sau is, you know where their two arms are, so there's no problem. In order for them to hit you, they have to let go. And when they do that, that's when you LARP. So for me, it's really not a problem if I'm chasing hands in any way, because I'm pretty much in control of what I'm doing with certain practitioners anyway. So the counter is, we want to learn how to recover the rear guard, and we're going to counter with a front turning punch. So we're here, and then you just cover and hit. So I'm retracting the hand. This is the hand that's being locked. I'm retracting that because I want my partner to grab the air. I don't want them to get hold of my hand. So I retract, and the punch is coming in. So I'm using my imagination, and I'm firing with a rear turning punch, with a lead turning punch. So from here, there's the guard, we're crossed hands position, my right versus his right. He larks me and throws a left straight punch. I retract, and I block with the Wu Sau, and then I counter with a front turning punch. That's a very good skill. I'd recommend you try and get that down. You're learning how to recover and counter against a standard Lap Sau. It is a LARP for LARP in terms of terminology. You want to try it, you want to get good at it, because when people LARP your arm, you want to make sure they don't grab and control or capture your arm, and you want to make sure that when they're LARPing you, they're going to feel your punch. That's what you're training for. You're not looking for a 1-2. You're not looking for 1-2. As soon as they touch, bang, you want to hit them on the half beat. And you want to be quite aggressive, and you want to be fast about it as well. That's your front turning punch. The rear turning punch is going to require you to circle. So we have this movement in the form, which is Hyun Sau. So when somebody grabs your arm, you circle from the inside to the outside, or to the outside, depending on how you look at it. So from this position and facing the dummy, they're going to LARP with their right arm. And as the left punch comes in, I cover and circle. So you need very good reactions for this. And then what I do is I hit with a rear turning punch, and then I follow up with a front turning punch. So the dummy teaches you that when one hand's high, one's hand low, and the low comes to high and the high goes to low. There's a concept in the wooden dummy. So I'm actually doing that when I'm countering from this position, as he LARPs, hit low, and then I hit high. And I'm using these heavy turning punches that we train in the beginners program, just because for me personally, I like to teach beginners to be able to use the fists, use it well, and bury punches into the skull, into the soft bones, and where there's not a lot of tissue. So you're going to cut the skin. So we want to teach beginners to be really good punchers. Yeah. So from this position, and here, 1, 2. Obviously you don't want to hit the dummy. Park, hit. Or Hyun, outside, outside. And you move off. There's lots of different ways that you can counter this technique. I'm just giving you 2 or 3 different ways. So that's the rear turning punch that you utilize in Junma or Jusamma. Just turning, turning, turning. The final counter that I like to do quite a lot is when somebody LARPs and there's a punch coming towards me and it's extending, then if I get the timing right, if I can retract my guard, then I can hit them in the ribs whilst their punch is extended. So from this position, you're in a crossed hands position against their right arm, and they're going to do a right Lap Sau and a left punch. You cover and you hit. You cover and you hit. From here, cover and you hit. Obviously, from here, I've still got contact and I can LARP. So from that position, I'm learning how to LARP with the Lap Sau hand on the back and the punch on the front, as opposed to attacking like so with a LARP on the front leg. So this type of interpretation I'm teaching to beginners, but it's an interpretation that comes from the knives. It's how you do the Lap Sau when you've got pretty much a heavy sword in your hand. And obviously training with the blades is good because it gives you a lot of weight in the forearm. So there you have it, 3 simple ways that you can self-train Lap Sau on a wooden dummy when you haven't got a partner. I hope you enjoyed this, and join me for the next video when I'm going to show you how to apply these techniques with a training partner. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.